Precision Time Align from Eventide is a tool designed to solve a problem that arises when recording a single sound source with multiple microphones in multiple positions. The time it takes for the sound to arrive at each microphone is slightly different due to the differing distances from the sound source. For example, a top and bottom snare mic are different distances from the actual drum. The tom and bass drum mics are even further away, as are the overhead mics, or multi-miking a guitar amp with multiple mics in different positions. When the recordings are played back with these slight timing discrepancies, deep notches can occur, where frequencies are canceled out due to the misaligned phase between the multiple signals. Now, the result is an overall thinner sound due to the uneven reproduction of the full frequency spectrum. Precision Time Align allows for the small necessary timing adjustments to bring the tracks in line with each other so that there are no notches in the frequencies. Let's take a kind of clinical look here. I've got a sine wave. I'm going to play it momentarily. And it registers at about -14. Now I have it duplicated and it'll become amplified and louder as it's perfectly in sync and in phase. Now you can see that both waveforms are perfectly in sync. If we reverse the polarity so that when this is at the bottom, this is at the top, we'll get a perfect cancellation and all the frequencies will be canceled out. Here I've got Precision Time Align on each of these two tracks. So if I invert the phase on one of them, we're going to get silence. Now, when there's a slight timing discrepancy, which I'm going to introduce here, we're going to get a thinning of the frequencies. So for example, here, they're not perfectly aligned up. I'll hit play, and we'll see we're not getting the same amplitude that we were before with the two of them together. And I'll adjust the timing a little bit more, and it'll be even thinner. So you can hear there's a thinning and canceling of some of the frequencies, and this represents what happens in the real world when we have the signal traveling through air and arriving at the microphones at slightly different times. Now, the idea with Precision Time Align is that we can correct this by inverting the phase on one. We're still not going to get perfect cancellation now because of the timing delays. In fact, it's louder because it's more out of phase than it is in phase, but we can use the coarse and fine adjustments to zero in and get as close to cancellation as possible. And then we use the fine adjustment to zero in even more. And there we go. We get perfect cancellation, or pretty close. So now with that phase invert reversed and back to normal, we're going to get perfectly aligned audio again, and it should be at the full signal level, despite the timing discrepancy. So that's how this works to correct the timing discrepancies, and we can see the corrections that are made measured in milliseconds, samples, and even in distances. So here's a bit of a real-world example where I've recorded an electric guitar amp. I've got a dynamic mic right up against the speaker, and I've got a condenser a little bit farther away. Now the two are recorded, and playing back together, they sound fine as is. However, due to the distance between the two mics, there is some subtle timing delays that are causing some frequencies to be canceled. So if we zoom in here on the waveform, we can see, I'm going to enlarge it so we can see it a bit larger. You can see the delay here. It's very minimal, but it's there. So I'm going to place the cursor, for example, right at the little dip in this waveform here, and we can see that on this dynamic mic, it's a little earlier, and here it's a bit later. So I want to delay the dynamic mic so that it's in time with this. So I'm going to create a little edit selection to measure the distance between this peak and this peak over here. And we can see that the distance is 22 samples if we're viewing with our time ruler in samples. So 22 samples is the amount I have to delay the dynamic mic. I'm going to open up Precision Time Align here. So now I can set the slider for a delay of 22, and I can use the fine tuning to zero in on it, or I can simply double click and type 22 in there. So now I'll be able to play back the audio file, secure in the knowledge that even if I pan these, I won't have to worry about cancellation. Now, the reason that we're not getting the theoretical cancellation when I press the phase invert button is due to the fact that the two different microphones have different EQ plots when they pick up the audio, and also the proximity effect of one being farther than the other means that the actual levels at the different frequencies are different in terms of what's captured on each mic. So that's Precision Time Align from Eventide.